Hey everyone, Char5 here, and this is part 2 of this challenge video. I grossly underestimated how much information I'd be spewing in this, so if you haven't yet checked out part 1 of this challenge, be sure to do so. Okay, on with the show. But with that, we finally move on to Tails. Sonic is the longest story in this game, and so to be done with Sonic, like, that was the hardest part of this playthrough. That was the hardest part of this challenge. Tails, on the other hand, is significantly easier to do. So his first stage is Windy Valley, but I ended up doing Casinopolis first because I could. In fact, I'm pretty sure you can do that just with normal Tails, and I didn't know you could do Casinopolis first. Unfortunately, it starts off not promising at all because there's a huge upward slope that Big just can't get up. Even if I tried going to the sides, there was just no way I was getting up the slope. Maybe it's possible if I do enough momentum based movements and I get enough speed, maybe I can get up the slope, but otherwise that's just not gonna happen anytime soon. The characters you race are also rubber banding. Something that I thought was really interesting is that after a certain point, when you race Sonic, he's actually he's a really cool guy because if he gets too ahead of you, he stops. He just stops in his tracks and waits for Tails to catch up. Like, he won't keep going. He just waits for you there until you get to where he is. You can still lose races to Sonic, but it's really hard to because he does wait for you. When you reach this part of the vent, again, I guess they programmed Big to be fat. He can't be carried by the wind. He's a rock in the wind. So when I changed to Amy, she's a lightweight, so she gets launched really high really quickly compared to Tails. But aside from that, like, it's a really short, it really made me realize how short the stage was. And again, it's kind of 50-50. You can sort of do the stage with Big, but half of it needs to be done with Tails or another character. So I haven't done Windy Hill yet, so I have to go do that first. But we have the fight with the Egg Hornet for that. And as we know, this is completely possible, so nothing new here. To further prove my point that, like, depending on the character you select, things in their story will already have happened. I was here with Sonic, and the Wind Stone was already there, but it was missing from Tails' workshop, meaning that because he already put the Wind Stone there, he couldn't do it again. So you do need to do that as Tails. And now we have the Windy Valley race with Sonic, which it's really awkward. It has, like, pretty much the exact same problems that Sonic's Windy Hill has because the layout is really similar to his second half. It has, like, the same issues. And you would think that I'd be able to use the green rings to my advantage. Sometimes I can. Not really, though. I still, like, fall like a rock whenever Big goes through the rings, so it doesn't really do much in the way of helping me. Because with Tails, it propels him forward and uses his momentum. Like, it halts his momentum, but it pushes him forward, so you still have that stored momentum after you use the rings. Since Big has none, he just falls. He just falls after using the rings. And here I tried to use them, and I just fell to my death. So, like, there's really no point in using them. Something really strange that they changed in this part of Tails' Windy Valley is that the platform that's there with Sonic for you to get to the middle spring isn't there anymore, and I guess that's because they knew, well, Tails can fly. He doesn't need this. But I just thought that was really weird. Like, it was really weird that they'd get rid of that. Windy Valley really just has the same issues that Sonic Windy Valley has. Wind trails that you can't go up because Big's too slow. Parts that I would probably be able to skip, but can't. So, yeah. One thing that I did notice was really strange was, unlike Twinkle Park, this time I was able to do a sequence break because I already did the Casinopolis level. When I went to a Station Square, it immediately put me outside of Casinopolis as if I'd already done it. So I didn't have to do Casinopolis again, which was really cool. So now we have to head into Tails' Ice Cap with Big, which is the race with Sonic with the snowboards. And yeah, Big can't ride a snowboard as we've seen in Sonic's stage. However, like I said, Sonic rubber bands, except this time I don't know how he's able to wait for you. I guess he still can, but if you just go downhill and keep jumping, you pretty much stay neck to neck with Sonic throughout the whole race. There are points where Sonic just, I guess the AI gets stuck or something. Tails' Ice Cap is 100% doable as Big. You can beat Sonic with Big in Ice Cap, no problem, and that's really weird. I fought Knuckles with Amy this time around so as to, like, just do something different. Not only did my game crash afterward, but Amy's sound files didn't load, Sonic's did, and I don't know why. Again, you have to do the Chaos 4 fight. You have to do the Chaos 4 fight 3 times. Once as Sonic, once as Tails, and once with Knuckles. But it's really just the same fight every time. Like, nothing really changes in between them. And again, because you're Tails, you have to do Sky Chase Act 1. Again, nothing special. So then we have to get the emerald from the Mystic Ruins Forest and do Tails' little sand dune sub-level, which, much like the ice cap level, you can do no problem because it's just you running. But because it's another snowboarding level, or another boarding level, I guess, sandboarding, I guess, the camera acts really weird because it expects you to be going a lot faster than you are. So the camera angles are a little wonky, and your movement is a little weird too. But again, it's doable, no problem. And ironically, we're actually chasing Froggy this time, so that's a huge coincidence. That, of course, leads into Sky Chase Act 2. Again, nothing different. Much like Sonic Sky Deck, this one is really, really impossible to do with Big. And what's even worse is that, like a lot of the other stages, it's only like half the stage that you have to do with Tails. And it's the first half, which was the one that was pretty impossible to do with Big. This is like the one level that I'm like, there's no part of this is like doable with Big. Like, you can get 2 steps in front of you, and you'd have to change the Tails immediately. Like, there's really no point in even trying to do this level with Big, because you're just not going to be able to at all. Again, we have the fight with Gamma, which I know we can do as Big because I did it in my original recording of this, but I wasn't going to risk it this time around, so I just did it with Tails. And now we actually reach Tails' last stage, which is a lot faster than we did for Sonic, which is Speed Highway. And I assumed this would be completely doable with Big because it was with Sonic, and the layout is most of the same. That is early on, because the latter half of the stage is completely like catered to flying characters like Eggman and Tails. And unlike Sonic, Eggman doesn't wait for you, so you definitely want to catch up with him. But if there was a way you could bypass a lot of the stuff, there is a way to catch up with him if he gets too ahead of you, and that's to get a checkpoint and die. That resets Eggman's position too, where you're both starting at your checkpoint, but that still doesn't make this any less difficult to do with Big. Again, because there are parts where you have to use the booster rings, and they just do nothing for Big. For this part right here, I figured maybe I could like jump to that lower platform with Big and maybe get an advantage on Eggman, but it wasn't gonna happen. Like, it's too far for Big to reach. And then there's this part, which normally you would be able to do because they put the booster pads right in front of the bulldozer thing, the construction thing that I'm still not sure what it is, but they put it a little further back, so it's actually not possible to do that specific one with Big. And that's such a weird like design choice. I don't know why they did that. And there's another part right here where I tried to take the rocket as Big, but for some reason, he just can't take the rocket. It's weird how selective it is sometimes. So it's like, you can do like a fourth of this stage as Big, and then like you have to do the rest of it as Tails, because it's a level that's designed with Tails in mind. Even the last part, like the platforms are so thick that you can't jump on them as Big. You have to change to another character. And then we move on to Tails' final boss, which is the Egg Walker. Again, this is completely 100% doable as Big, which is cool. Like, I like that every single boss in Tails' story is doable as Big. The problem was, again, for this recording, I kept crashing and crashing over and over again, but I'm fairly certain that I have the original footage where I do this as Big, and I think I still might do it this time around. I don't remember. So yeah, overall, Tails wasn't anywhere near as annoying as Sonic was. Anything that I knew Big wouldn't be able to do, I switched to Tails immediately because I figured, like, there's no possible way he can do this. The stages were overall shorter, the story is overall shorter, but that leads us into Knuckles' story, which I really feel like is the halfway point between Sonic and Tails' stories, because, like, there's a lot of things he can do, and then there's a lot of stuff he can't do, and the story's just as, like, short, and I don't know. Like our first level is Speed Highway, but we're not doing, like, normal Speed Highway. This is just the Into Dawn part, because that's all Knuckles gets. Strangely enough, something I noticed here, and I don't know why that is, I had control of my action button again. Like, it wasn't crashing the game anymore, which was good because I had a lot of, like, police keys that were ramming into me, and that was super annoying. But I don't know why all of a sudden I could just use my fishing rod again. There were some parts that I had to climb up walls as Knuckles because there was no way Big could get up them. When it comes to Knuckles' stages, it really matters what luck you get and where the emeralds are placed. For example, this part right here, like the second emerald was like right next to where the first emerald was, and I could just jump from that platform to the platform where the emerald was, and no problem. It gave me a really good spawn. But then the third emerald shard was in a place where Big just could not reach because, like, there were no springs for him to reach up there. He can't climb. He can't jump far enough. So I did have to resort to using Knuckles to get up there, getting that last emerald. But if it was in an easier place, then I'm sure Big would most likely be able to do this, no problem. This was also where I was realizing that different characters have different sound effects too. Sonic and Tails don't have an emerald beeping sound effect. Amy has like a higher pitched one, and Big has like a lower pitched, almost non-existent sound effect. And not only that, but I had to use Knuckles to get the last emerald shard because it was inside of a tin can that only he can punch through. Like, Sonic can't homing attack it, Tails can't hit it, Amy can't hit it with the hammer. Maybe Gamma might have been able to do something. I couldn't really check. You had to do that as Knuckles, and I was actually kind of surprised about that. If I had gotten in another position, it might have been completely doable. And now we have Casinopolis as Big. I believe this one, again, a lot of these stages are very dependent on where the emeralds are located, because I got the first 2 emerald shards really easily as Big, and then there was this last one that required me to be launched really far with the spring, and I just couldn't. Maybe there was another way to get to where I need to go. I actually had to resort to, you know, another character in order to get up here because the emerald was up here, but it was only the one time, because otherwise it was super easy to do as Big. And now, of course, we have actually another Chaos fight, one that's specific to Knuckles, Chaos 2. And as you might expect, yeah, this is actually doable with Big as well. Again, I had to be really careful in what I was doing, otherwise I'd crash the game. And in fact, if anything, I think that this fight is easier with Big. When you glide with Knuckles, there's a lot of room for error, but all Big does is just uses his fishing rod. So it's like, it's almost a precise hit every time. So it's like, I feel like that fight is actually easier with Big, which is really weird to say. Now, of course, we have to go to Red Mountain, but before we do that, we have to get the little button that blows up monkeys, I guess. And you can only do that while digging for it in this specific spot as Knuckles. So doing this part of the adventure, or like this part of the hub world, is kind of only specific to Knuckles, mostly because he's the one that has to grab it by digging. But that leads us into Red Mountain, which, again, depending on where the emeralds are, depending on where their placement is, it can be really easy or really hard. This time around, it was kind of hard. I had to like because it's a more vertical based level than a lot of other Knuckles stages. Like, if I fall down to a lower level, there's really not an easy way for me to get up, so I would have to use Knuckles a lot. But depending on where the emeralds are, this can be either 100% not doable or 100% doable. In this case, it was kind of 50-50 because I had to climb up to certain parts with Knuckles, get the shard as Big, and then climb to a higher point as Knuckles. I could have done it the other way around, where I, climbed to the highest point first and then dropped down. And that's kind of what I did for one of the emeralds. There was this one part where it's like in the middle of like a set of monkey bars or something, and I had to jump right in the middle of it, but I missed it the first time, so I had to like go all the way back up as Knuckles, or I died, something like that. And I had to get it on my second try because I missed it the first time, but because the camera wasn't cooperating with me. It was really annoying. So after Red Mountain is the point where you have to go fight Sonic. Again, doable in my original recording. I didn't want to risk it this time around, so I just did it as Amy. But, yep, totally doable. After that, of course, we have the third and final Chaos 4 fight, which, as we all know, again, there's really nothing different about it from the other two. This part was kind of funny, but also annoying. I kept trying to put the gold and silver statues in their place, but because Big is not supposed to have silver and gold statues, they kept disappearing when I came back. So I eventually just had to bite the bullet and just do it as Knuckles, because you have to dig up the silver one, and when you come back, the gold one's gone, and then you have to go back and get the gold one, but when you come back, the silver one's gone, so you have to repeat the process all over again. So I just figured, you know what, whatever, I'll just do both of them as Knuckles. And it was almost like a sign of things to come too, because Lost World is practically impossible as Big. Again, like the other stages, it really depends on where the emeralds are located, but this acts like a really big room that they expect you to climb up, and Big just is, as we've seen many times, is not good when it comes to vertical stages. I would rule this one as like 80% impossible, like with that, even, probably 90, like that 10% is like, maybe you'll get lucky and they'll spawn in like really good places for Big, but it's highly unlikely that they will. And that leads us into probably one of the most annoying stages for me. The thing is, I think this is the prime example of Knuckles' story as Big can be easy or impossible depending on where the emeralds are. Like, this is the prime example of that, because I remember not having a really hard time with this in my original recording of this, but this time around, there was this one emerald shard I could not get because of where it was, and because I couldn't alter the ship's position as Big. I had to do it as Knuckles, but like, I was just so damn close to getting it as Big. And whenever I would reach this part of the level, it would just throw me back, and it would change the gravity, and I'd almost have to do the stage all over again. And it was annoying every single time to get there again and fall again. But I'm pretty sure, like, depending, if you get it in good positions, this is just 100% doable. Which, you know, Sky Chase, that's weird to say that when it comes to Big, but... So again, we have the Chaos 6 fight, the same one that we had with Sonic, except this time some of the parts of the floor are broken, and that's not a huge hindrance for me personally. This is the final boss of Knuckles' story, and pretty much you go about it the same way you would in Sonic's story. Just have to go about it really carefully, again, because one wrong move could crash the game, and it happened quite a few times, but it is, again, much like Sonic's version of the fight, it is 100% doable. So, something weird happened when I finished playing Knuckles' story. The lighting engine messed up in the player select screen, and I don't know what caused that. But the thing is, it didn't just affect the character select screen lighting, it affected the rest, like the character's lighting in general. And it was something that I couldn't fix, and I really don't know what caused this. If someone could explain to me what caused this, I would love to know. Starting off with Amy's story, we head into Twinkle Park. Much like Big, Amy's first level is Twinkle Park as well, and Amy's story is I'd say, aside from his own, it's the easiest story to do in Sonic Adventure, because it really is just platforming, and you would think that, you know, Big's not ideal for platforming, but the game also doesn't ask a whole lot of Amy, so, like, you pretty much do everything that you would with Amy with Big, and it's honestly not that big a deal. I was able to get through Twinkle Park just fine. I was surprised to see that you could actually hold on to the balloon as Big. That was cool. And then comes something that's not mandatory, but I wanted to do it anyway, which is the whack-a-mole thing. Because you get two different power-ups from this. For one, you have to beat the record. For the other, I think you have to get over 3,000 points. I didn't bother going for the 3,000 one, just because it's like, there's no point. I'm not really using Amy anyway. But I wanted to prove that you can get the high score with just Big. It's so weird to think that his fishing rod has the same properties as Amy's hammer. It's interesting to see where that applies, because not everything can be attacked by the fishing rod, not everything can be attacked by the hammer, not everything can be attacked by Knuckles. It's weird. But after that, we head into Hot Shelter, which is Amy's second level, and almost right off the bat, we come across something else that only Amy can do, and I think that's... I mean, I guess I get it, because no other character has to move a crank, but it's interesting that that's the only thing that she's able to do on her own, because, like, Big can't do it, Knuckles can't do it, Sonic, Tails, nobody else but Amy can do it. So unfortunately, this is sort of impossible with Big. I just have to keep switching to Amy for it. There's this room right here where I don't think I've ever done this before, except for Big. I'm trying to get through this hole, like through this vent on the top left, but Big is too large to fit through it normally. I mean, he can fit through it, but he's too big for me to jump through it, so I actually have to push the stairs in order for me to jump on the stairs and get to it. I didn't even know I could push the stairs. I've always just done it normally with Amy, just jump through that vent with the hammer. So that was interesting to find out. Again, we run into a couple cranks that only Amy can turn, but for the most part, yeah, this is another level that Big can pretty much just do on his own. Aside from those, you know, couple instances where Amy needs to turn a crank. There's a part right here where we can do a little bit of platforming, but it's not 100% necessary to do, because we can walk on the ledge of a gate and get to the rocket, which, as we've established, Big can ride. And then Big can also carry things, so this quote-unquote puzzle with the colored cubes, not an issue. There's sort of an alternate route we can take here. We can either take a spring, or we can but Big can't really reach that. Or we could use the crank, I think it is. But there's another path on the right that we can take, and Big can do that no problem. And all we have to do now is just get those few extra cubes, and we're done with the level. So all in all, the only thing Amy really needed to do with Big for this level is just turn the cranks, and that's about it. Like, otherwise, he can just do all this on his own. That being said, something else really weird happened for some reason when I started doing the quote-unquote puzzle. Zero disappeared for some reason. I don't know where he went, but honestly, that just made it easier for me. You can swat Zero away with the fishing rod, but again, at this point, I really didn't want to risk it in case it crashed the game. I didn't want to do the level all over again. So I just went about it, and he just disappeared. I don't know what happened, but again, it made things a lot easier for me. When talking about Amy's story, this is really where you realize how short it is, especially compared to like Sonic Story, because we're already at Amy's last stage, which is Final Egg, and her Final Egg is actually kind of different from Sonic's in terms of how you can go about it. For one, there are springs on that first slope that you can go to, but you just go about it normally. I don't think there was a single time that I actually had to switch to Amy, I don't think. Yeah, no, not a single time I had to switch to Amy. The one part that gave me a bit of trouble was that last jump before I get to the balloon, but fortunately, like, if you can get a little bit of wiggle room, Big can reach it, meaning that you don't have to switch to Amy at all. So yeah, pretty much 2 for 3 on like levels that Big can do entirely on his own. And even then, I'd say that Hot Shelter is a level that Big can do on his own. If not for the cranks, Big would be able to do that level all on his own. And now we have Amy's only boss fight against Zero. It's the last thing that she needs to do in her story, and again, I'm being really cautious in terms of like hitting Zero perfectly, and he's like, the best thing is I don't have to jump or anything. With Amy, you kind of, I guess you don't need to jump with Amy, but it makes it sort of easier to hit like the button on his head. With Big, you can just stand there, and much like with Chaos, you can just boink him on the head with the fishing rod, and it's a super easy fight. So honestly, Amy is like the first character who's like mostly, I'd say 95% doable with Big. And now comes, I can't even believe I'm saying this, the easiest part of the run. Like, this is the... I never thought there would come a time in my life where I'd be like, oh yes, finally, I get to do Big story. And the thing is, I don't have as difficult a time with Big's levels as a lot of people do. And I think that's because people really don't understand how the fishing mechanics work, because they think that it's random, and it's really not. If you check the instruction manual, or even like the in-game instructions, you can see that if you hit down on the control stick or the camera stick, I forget, it's probably both, but I think it's on the control stick. If you hit down on it when Froggy grabs the lure, you get a hit immediately. So like, I pretty much zoomed through Big stages. They were like the easy. It was so quick that I even had time to like go get each of Big's lures, because I know where they are too. So Big's story was absolutely no problem for me. And I get it. Like, that's kind of the point when you're trying to do everything as Big. So it's like, of course Big can do his own story, but I just really want to illustrate how not difficult his story is. In fact, I'd say that his is probably the easiest story to go through, even without the challenge. That being said, in Ice Cap, I did come across a really weird glitch where Froggy was still in the water. I was casting my lure, and no matter what I did, he wasn't going for it. And that's when I realized there were no fish in the water. I don't know what despawned the fish, but I guess the AI for Froggy got deleted alongside the fish. So I ended up restarting the level, and then it worked normally. I don't know what that was about. And then Chaos 6 is another boss that you fight technically 3 times. Big has his own version of the fight, which usually I get done in like the first 3 seconds of the fight, but for some reason Froggy just wasn't being cooperative this time around, and I couldn't hit the target. But again, you just have to hit Froggy and you win, so that's Big story, I guess. And now on to technically the final character that we have to play with, E102 Gamma. And Gamma was definitely something in terms of what you have to do with them. Because the first level is technically, it's just showing you the ropes of how, ironically, Gamma's first level is Final Egg, and you get to just go through the level normally. There's not really any challenge with it. There are like 2 enemies and that's it. And I guess I have control of my fishing rod again. I can use it freely because the game, I don't think, crashed on me anymore from this point forward. And I was thinking maybe that had something to do with me getting the fishing rod upgrade. I don't know. But actually, for the first time, I found out that there was something above where the Sonic doll is, because you can't reach that as Big, or any other character for that matter. You have to use Gamma's laser or his Vulcan cannon to hit that Sonic doll. But I saw like a platform above me, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can use that to get to the other side, and no dice. Big can reach that platform up there on his own, but there is an invisible wall that prevents you from getting over there. But not only that, I actually switched to Sonic to see if I could do that. And I noticed something else. I have another mod that enables some voice clips that they got rid of for the release, where the characters comment on where they are. And I guess Sonic has his own particular line for Final Egg, where he actually calls Eggman Robotnik. And I've never heard that line before this recording.
Just you wait, Robotnik.
And I've never heard Ryan Drummond say Robotnik, so that was really cool for me. I don't know. Again, I'm figuring out a lot of stuff about this game that I never knew before, even though I've been playing this game for years. So unfortunately, you do have to sort of... This level is technically impossible because only Gamma can shoot the Sonic doll. Otherwise, Big can do the rest of it, and that's fine, I guess. But then we move on to our first boss battle, which is the first version of Beta, who I already knew from my previous recording that I wouldn't be able to fight because only Gamma can shoot the E-Series robots. But I did find out something really interesting, because I figured, okay, well, I'm fighting a lot of these bosses with Amy. Let me see if Amy can do it. And no, she couldn't. But I switched to other characters to see if they could. And only Knuckles is able to actually fight the E-Series robots. And that makes me wonder if there was like an E-Series robot fight for Knuckles. Because, or unless that the E-Series robots, their hitboxes work the same way that like the tin cans in Knuckles' stage work. I'm not entirely sure if that's the case. The second stage we have is Emerald Coast again. This time it's much easier. This one is like the first thing that you can do in Gamma's story that's 100% completable as Big, because Gamma's level actually ends right before that first ramp that makes Sonic's version impossible. So this is the one that we can do 100%. And ironically, it's also a level where our objective is to get Froggy, so that's pretty funny. So for Hot Shelter, I kind of sequence broke, and I don't know how I was able to do that. I guess because Big's story is already complete, I'm just able to do whatever I want now. The lighting got even funkier here. Now Big has like this rainbow hue to his lighting. I don't know what that's about. But our first challenge comes from, at this point, we're already supposed to be able to have the hover thing that Gamma has, and he's supposed to use that to get to that ladder right there. But as I came to find out, only Gamma can do that. Because even Knuckles, like if you glide with Knuckles, he can't grab onto the ladder for some reason. But I did use him to climb up the wall. I guess that's one part that you can only do as Gamma as well, which, again, fascinating that you wouldn't be able to do that with anybody else. You can actually hit the bombs that Gamma's supposed to hit with Big's fishing rod. And again, I'm so grateful that I'm no longer crashing when I use Big, because that would be really annoying. Actually, you can hit them, I believe, as every character. You can hit it with Amy's hammer, you can hit it with Knuckles, and because we're not playing with Gamma, we don't actually have to worry about the timer in these levels anymore. I forgot to mention that, because everyone else's timer counts up. Gamma is the only one whose timer counts down, which, now that I think about it, makes me wonder how that would affect him being in other characters' stages, I wonder. But we come across a slope that, again, we can't go up. Anybody else would be able to go up this except for Big. And as if that weren't enough, even when we do get to the top of it, there's this huge gap that Big can't jump over. So, again, the point's kind of moot. So far, I feel like this stage is seeming kind of not super interesting. It's like the same stuff over and over again. But here we have a part where normally you would hit that button to have like this crane game play out. You'd normally hit that from afar as Gamma, but you can actually do it. If you do it fast enough, you actually can do it with just Big. I thought that was really cool. But that leads into an even more interesting part, the part with the trolley, or like the little train. As I came to find out, I found this out in my original recording too. If you're Big, for some reason, the sides of the stage behave like water. I don't think this is the case with Gamma. I think if you fall with Gamma, you're just screwed. But because Big has a flotation device, he doesn't sink. So this just acts like water, and Big is able to just like swim to the side, and you would never see this with Gamma because he doesn't have a flotation device. He actually floats on top of water. He never goes in it, but because Big can go in water and not sink because of his power-up, we're able to see this, and we're actually able to outrun the train depending on some movement that we do, because there are certain parts of, there's certain like trams that we can't get on because they're too small and Big is too large, so we actually have to outrun it by swimming. Oh man, it really makes me wish the rest of the stage were possible, because this is such a cool thing to do, and it's actually really creepy when you're underneath because it's all like dark and spooky, and I don't know, maybe that's just a phobia I have. But this train part is absolutely doable with Big. The next part, not so much, because yeah, we can get rid of all these things, but then there's a bomb up there that we can't reach as Big because it's too tall. And even if we could, the next part has a really, really long slope, and there might be a way for Big to avoid this, because if you land on top of the hole, you fall like a huge distance, and if you land right in the hole that you need to go in, maybe Big can bypass this part. I wasn't able to do it, and I didn't want to keep trying over and over and over again. I was getting really annoyed with so many Kikis just throwing bombs at me. It was super, super annoying, but I'm sure that there is a way to land in the hole that you need to land in order to proceed with the level. Again, I did the ramp part with Amy, and I actually found out that there are items up there. I actually didn't know that, and I don't think you would normally notice that unless you had someone who went skyrocketing the way Amy does. But right after that, you have the fight with Delta, I believe, or Epsilon, who only Gamma would be able to reach, because even Knuckles can't reach him. There's an invisible wall. The only thing that can go through them are Gamma's Vulcan Cannon, so we do need to use Gamma for this fight. So this is another instance where other characters can't go into these rooms. I actually need to use Gamma in order to get his hover machine thing so that I can go fight Sonic. And here's an example. Now that I can use my fishing lure, I actually wanted to prove that you actually can win the character battles. I had a little bit of difficulty because it's Sonic, and Sonic's so damn fast compared to how slow Big is. So it was an actual like battle, but I was able to complete it with Big and prove that you can do that. This was just something I found funny during Gamma's cutscene. Big sort of off screen, I guess because he's slower than Gamma, and like his model is very different from Gamma, so you can only see like his crotch instead of like Gamma's entire body. I just wanted to show that. Again, we have to grab the Wind Key as Gamma in order to access Windy Valley. And Windy Valley, for the most part, again, much like Sonic and Tails' version, very, very doable. I'd say that Gamma's version of Windy Valley is actually more possible as Big than Sonic and Tails, but then we run into this part right here where you kind of do have to hover over this large gap because Big just can't make it. I believe I tried it with Amy as well, and Amy can make it. You just need to get a running start with Amy and then land on the right place, but you can cross that gap with Amy. Windy Valley is pretty much beginning to end doable as Big, except for Delta and that one gap. And yeah, I'll be using Knuckles to fight the E-Series robots just to do something different. Again, we head to Red Mountain for Gamma, and much like Sonic's version of it, it's kind of fun to do. And this lighting, for Big, the lighting was normal, but the lighting for the stage itself got funky, so it makes it look a lot more neon orange than it normally would be. It gives like a really interesting effect to the things in the stage. There's a lot of really interesting movements you can do in the stage to bypass like having to destroy explosives or get over the lava that are catered specifically towards Gamma's version of the stage. And from what I remember, most of this level is actually possible. You just have to find the right way. This part of the stage, for example, seems impossible to do with Big, but the way I went about it was just taking hits from the lava and then like using my invincibility frames to get onto the next platform that I needed to, because Big can't do it normally. Again, he's too slow. But then you come across this giant thing that would normally come down if you destroy the explosives with Gamma, and technically you can as Big, but you're at a huge risk of dying. It's actually not a solid object yet, so you can actually go through that rock and get to Epsilon. So that means that Gamma's Red Mountain is actually doable as Big, again, except for the boss fight, which I did as Knuckles, but other than that, it's 100% doable. So because I already defeated Zeta and I already did Hot Shelter, Again, I bypassed it. I don't have to do it anymore. Once I went back to the egg carrier, it just skipped me to the cutscene right before Beta Mark II. And again, like, I knew for sure I would not be able to hit him as big at all. I tried it in the original and it didn't work. But I wanted to do this as Knuckles, and it's a surprisingly very fun fight as Knuckles. It's similar to Gamma's fight, except you can't attack from a range. You have to attack right up close to him. So you have to let him charge at you and then like really quickly get to him and punch him, which is not always easy to do because sometimes he can get outside of the confines of the stage and you won't be able to hit him, but you still can defeat him. It just takes a little longer to do, but I'd say that it's even more fun to do as Knuckles than it is as Gamma. And now we approach the last story, the secret story that you get for beating everyone else's stories, which is the Supersonic Story. And most of this is going to be spent in the overworld, which, you know, Big can mostly traverse. There are a few doors here and there, especially the one leading towards Angel Island. That Amy and Big are the ones that don't go to Angel Island, so they can't open the door, but everyone else can, I believe. Actually, maybe Tails might not be able to either, because Tails never goes to Red Mountain, so who knows? All I know is that Big can't open it, so someone else needs to, but everything else in the overworld is pretty much doable. There's not a whole lot that needs to be said here. And unfortunately, we're sort of ending on a sour note for the challenge because only Supersonic can fight Perfect Chaos. And it's not just because you can't reach the other platforms as Big. I tried with other characters, like Tails who can fly, Knuckles who can glide. For some reason, the game sort of reads your state, and if it knows that, I don't know if this happens normally if you lose all your rings. I don't think it does, but even with Sonic, like if it reads that you're not in a super form state, it just kills you. So like you're only able to play for like 2 or 3 seconds, and then the game kills you. You're just dead. So you have to do this with Supersonic, and unfortunately, that is where the challenge ends. I kind of wish it ended on a higher note. I would have loved to be able to, because like you can beat literally every other form of Chaos as Big. You can do it perfectly. Perfect Chaos is the one form that you cannot beat as Big, and I really feel like it should be possible. But this was one of probably the most annoying things I've ever had to do. But I mean, it was fun. It was fun because I feel like I learned so much about a game that I've been playing for pretty much my whole life. Learning about how all the characters work, learning about how stages were designed, learning about how the game itself works, and seeing how different characters react in different environments. I feel like this is something that not a lot of people would want to do themselves, and rightfully so. It's really, you know, it's called a challenge for a reason, but I'm glad that I was able to go through this. I went through it twice, which is once more than I would have liked to, but I really do hope you guys enjoyed watching that and enjoyed learning about how this game works and how, like, what things you can do with which character, because for me, personally, it was super fascinating. It was super fascinating to see all these things, and I was super passionate about this personally because, I don't know, like, it's a game that's really close to my heart, and I really wanted to see if I could take on this challenge and do things that people may not have considered were possible. And while I wasn't able to do everything I wanted to do, especially considering like Emerald Coast, it was fun, and I would love to do something else. But what do you guys think? Would you guys like to see me try something else? Maybe someone else, like Gamma or something, tackle everyone else's stories? I think that would be pretty interesting to see, but let me know, and thanks for watching.